The Chevrolet Cruze, being a global model, has a wide selection of engines. There are even several diesel engines in the range. But you are unlikely to meet them on our roads. We only sell petrol Cruzes. Let's talk about their engines now. 1. 6 plus 109 horsepower F16D3. The base engine for the Chevrolet Cruze is an old, weak 1.6-liter naturally aspirated engine based on Opel's Z16Z engine. F16D3 went to Cruze from Leccetti. It's a good motor, but over the years it tends to leak oil through all the seals, from the valve cover gasket to the pan. The EGR valve, or rather the exhaust gases it redirects, and oil vapors from the VCG can coat the valve stems with a thick crust and cause them to hang. This is where strange misfires appear. Diagnostics reveal low compression in the cylinders. The same mixture clogs the throttle valve, then the engine speed fluctuates until it stops completely. 1. 8 plus 140 horsepower Z18XR/F18D4. 1. 6 plus 124 horsepower Z16XR/F16D4. The older and probably the most common engine on the Cruze is a 1.8-liter naturally aspirated engine. It was available throughout the release of the first generation. He has a younger brother with a volume of 1.6 liters. It replaced the old 1.6-liter engine after restyling. Everything said below about the 1.8-liter engine also applies to the 1.6-liter, so this engine is the brainchild of Opel engineers. With a timing belt drive, 2-phase shifters and no hydraulic compensators, it has a couple of bad spots. Firstly, this is an oil heat exchanger. It is an aluminum box next to the oil filter cup. The box is bolted to the cylinder block, from where engine oil and antifreeze enter it. When the gaskets between these circuits dry out, the oil and antifreeze mix. At the same time, liquid leaks may appear outside. This happens every 120,000 to 150,000 kilometers. An oil emulsion appears in the expansion tank, and the oil corrodes the cooling system pipes. Therefore, it is best to change all heat exchanger gaskets in advance. Although there is another solution, Craftsman, with the permission of the owners, weld the heat exchanger and let the oil flow to the filter glass through a separate tube. As a result, the cooling and oil circuits are permanently separated, but the oil does not cool either. Those who did this did not seem to notice any problems with the filter boiling or other consequences of heating the oil. Although, due to the hot and quickly degrading oil, you can even reach the screwed bearings. Here we must note that the standard thermostat of this engine is controlled. It opens at a temperature of 105 degrees. Craftsman install passive thermostats with an opening temperature of 92 degrees. In this case, you should correct the ECU firmware, remove the thermostat control function from it so that the error does not appear, and also change the fan activation temperature from the standard 108 degrees to 98 degrees. Even on a 1.8-liter engine, over time, the exhaust camshaft phase shifter will malfunction, a check engine and error P0011 will appear. A new phase shifter will cost $200,000. For your own peace of mind, before purchasing it, you can rearrange the phase shifter control valves. If nothing changes and the error does not move, then the intake phase shifter is definitely tired. In general, the control valve solenoid fails with the appearance of error P0016. By the way, if errors in phase control appeared after replacing the timing belt, then the camshaft position sensor master disc was almost certainly damaged during the replacement process. Other minor dirty tricks of the 1.8-liter engine are oil leaks from under the valve cover, a burst membrane of the crankcase ventilation system valve in the same cover, broken insulators on the modular ignition coil, and disintegrating pipes, including those for throttle cooling. And, which happens quite rarely, a broken oil pump gasket, due to which oil also enters the cooling circuit. Let us add that in a 1.8-liter engine there are sometimes cases of pistons destruction because their skirts literally fall off or the partitions between the pistons crumble. This happens on engines running on gas, once filled with bad gasoline or simply poorly maintained. And to completely scare you, or rather, of course to warn you, there was a problem on the 1.8-liter Cruze with chafing of the tube supplying gasoline to the ramp. The tube is rubbed close to the fitting connected to the ramp. This problem, which ends with gasoline leaking, the appearance of its smell and sometimes a fire under the hood, was typical for Cruzes in the first years of production. The dealers replaced the fuel pipe with a new and improved one. Just make sure that this hose isn't really rubbing anywhere. 1.4 turbo 140 horsepower A14XR, A14 net. The only turbo engine found on Cruzes is the 1.4 turbo from Opel. In principle, this is a good engine that has gotten rid of its shortcomings. He is also not averse to sweating oil. His timing chain lasts about 120,000 to 150,000 kilometers. Good oil service will greatly extend the life of the turbine. It has a sophisticated crankcase ventilation system, the leaks in which can confuse and direct towards the Lambda probe. Diesel engines. Diesel Chevrolet Cruze are found in nature, but here they are as rare as dinosaurs. In Europe, the Cruze was available with a 2-liter turbo diesel. At first it was a VM Motorai motor, which was assembled under license in Korea. It was then replaced with a new engine jointly developed with Fiat. We have a review of the first engine, which is still known from the Chevrolet Captiva. It is a good engine. Manual transmission, D16 5-street manual transmission. The 5-speed manual transmission D16, which is a pair with naturally aspirated engines, is old and made somehow unsightly. Even on the new ones there was play in the differential, which, however, can be eliminated with an adjusting nut. Due to play in the differential, there are clicks when starting from a stop and a hum while driving. When changing the oil in this mechanics, the pan is removed, then the main gear and differential gears become visible. Often the satellites turn out to be quite worn. Sometimes wear ends with the pinion axis breaking off. In general, in this matter, one gets the impression that the differentials were adjusted at random at the factory, so some people have a D16 manual transmission for several 100,000 kilometers, while others had it changed under warranty. This transmission also has play in the axle shafts, which is not easy to eliminate without creative repairs. The play of the axle shafts causes their seals to leak oil. Moreover, no matter how much you change the seals, after a few thousand kilometers the leak will resume. Backlash is present in the spline connection of the axle shafts and their gears. Craftsmen grind bushings that seal the fit of the axle shafts. In addition, there are known cases of wear of bearings and gear synchronizers, and breakdown of gear stops. If the gears begin to shift into gear with difficulty, and then the lever begins to jam and cannot be pulled out of a certain gear, then the problem is in the lock of the selected gear. It is located in the gear selection mechanism on the transmission itself. This retainer can be changed separately. Also, the cables from the backstage to the selection mechanism require attention, caress and lubrication, and the backstage itself, namely its plastic apple, will be happy to be lubricated. This will protect the plastic from wear and play in the slide. M32 6-street manual transmission, with a 1.4-liter turbo engine, a 6-speed gearbox is installed. Mechanical M32. It is nicer and more reliable than the 5-speed, but also not without its sins. Changing the oil will protect it from premature wear. We have a detailed disassembly of this transmission on our channel. Automatic transmission, 6T30, 6T46 speed automatic transmission. 2-pedal versions of the Chevrolet Cruze received automatic transmissions 6T30 and 6T40. These transmissions were greatly lightweight, their design turned out to be weak, so they crumbled and fell apart literally by 30,000 kilometers. These machines were constantly modernized and improved. We can talk about some kind of reliability since 2014. And only if the owner installed a separate external cooling radiator. The factory radiator appeared by 2014, but there is a thermostat in the supply that can treacherously jam. After this, the automatic will literally grind itself from the inside due to the breakdown of the retaining ring and the disintegration of one of the clutch drums. Automatic 6T30 and 6T40 are sensitive to the purity of ATF. It needs to be changed every 30,000 kilometers. By the way, the level can be measured with a dipstick. To do this, there is a plastic plug on the case. Take it out and insert the probe there. These American transmissions are inexpensive and easy to repair. Some owners quite successfully repair them in their garage. True, if the hydraulic unit is damaged, then you will have to forget about cheapness and simplicity. Chevrolet Cruze got rattling brake calipers. The fact is that from the factory the gaps between the guide pins and the brackets are too large. When the lubricant dries out there, the movable bracket begins to dangle along with the guides, causing a loud knock, ringing and rattling noise on uneven surfaces. Over time everything gets worse because the fingers break, the gap increases. This was not recognized as a warranty case. Meanwhile, due to loose calipers and pads in them, the wear rate of brake discs increases significantly. The owners and service stations saved themselves as best they could. They filled the holes for the guides with lubricant and turned out new guide bushings of slightly increased diameter. There are other solutions, but less effective. They add springs, tighten brackets, and insert various types of seals. The suspension of the Chevrolet Cruze is like that of a public sector car. In front there are McPherson struts from the Opel Astra J, and in the rear there is a beam. The suspension has a resource and unpretentiousness. The original front control arms are aluminum. The ball control arm is not sold separately. Therefore, you will have to pay about $260 for the original lever assembly. Rear silent blocks are sold separately, $60 for the original. The original stabilizer links are plastic and cost $26. The wheel bearings are integrated with the hub, so new front ones today cost under $500 or $200 for a branded equivalent. Prices for rear hubs are also not particularly encouraging. The rear suspension has 2 silent blocks in the beam. The original sells for $60. You don't have to worry about the body of the Chevrolet Cruze. It doesn't rust. Although the paint chips quite easily when hit by small stones, it can peel off at the junction of body parts and bumpers. The resulting craters and sandblasted surfaces on the edges and thresholds do not rust for a very long time. The trunk lock button on the Chevrolet Cruze is dying like a fly. Water gets into it due to the fact that the outer rubber casing cap is poorly sealed around the perimeter. Experienced owners simply buy a bunch of non-original buttons and replace them when they become inoperable. Few people manage to reliably seal it. Quite a few more owners have added a trunk release button to the interior so as not to have to worry about opening it after the sudden demise of the button on the trunk. A fairly common problem with the Chevrolet Cruze is the damper drive, which is responsible for mixing hot and cold air flows. The ears on the damper rods break off, so the damper loses its drive and remains in one position. The temperature of the air entering the cabin will not be regulated. The ventilation only supplies cold or hot air into the cabin. It means the damper is stuck in its extreme position and no longer moves. This problem happened on Cruze after 100,000 kilometers. Owners bought expensive new rods for the lever drive. As it turned out, over time they also break off, their ears burst. Therefore, craftsmen simply construct steel rods and glue them on top of old ones with broken ears. You can get to the damper drive after removing the front panel trim in its lower part on the driver's side. You will have to remove the air duct located there and cut a hole in the box in which the damper is located. Other options are also possible. The main thing is to simply assemble a reliable lever drive for the damper. If in winter the lower parts of the front door windows freeze or do not dry out, and this is not a breakdown, but a feature, the side deflectors blow them weakly. The fuel level sensor also does not last long in the Cruze. It just starts lying, i.e. incorrectly displays the fuel level when the actual level is less than half. Sometimes the arrow suddenly shows 0 level, and an error occurs. This occurs because the potentiometer tracks in the sensor are worn out. The sensor just needs to be changed. And to do this you will have to remove the tank because there is no hatch in the body under the rear seat. The tank can be removed quite easily. Some owners cut a hole in the body and make a hatch. The fuel pump and sensor are located right in the middle under the rear seat, and if about a third of the fuel reserve remains in the tank, and at the same time, during acceleration and braking, the needle of the fuel level sensor begins to deviate greatly, then returns to its place, then this is a sure sign that partitions have begun to float freely in the fuel tank. There are partitions in any tank. They're needed to prevent the fuel from creating a wave. The partitions in the Cruze tank are plastic and installed in a spacer, held in this position by the force of springs. Sometimes a wave knocks them out. You can pay attention to extraneous noise from the tank, from under the rear seat, which appears during sharp acceleration and deceleration. These are the partitions hitting the walls of the tank. Heated front seats can also be attributed to frequent breakdowns. Heating mats cost $35. You can change them yourself. The upholstery is easily removed.